future, like really create the future. So I didn't think this was possible. And then I met my guest today, Jeremy Gutsche. He is a New York Times bestselling author. He's an award-winning innovation expert, and he's the CEO of Trend Hunter. They're the world's largest trend spotting platform and innovation consultancy. And we're going to talk today about how you can create the future. Now, his new book is a double-sided book. It's called Aptly Create the Future. It comes out on March 10th. Super excited to have him here. I met him about 8 years ago at an event that I was speaking at, and I walked in front of his slides, and yet still today, he's willing to be with me. What's up, Jeremy? How you doing, buddy?
Well, thanks very much for having me on the show.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. So for those who, the 7 people that are unfamiliar with you, how did you get started as the Trend Hunter?
Sure. So, I was always an entrepreneur at heart, wanting so badly to figure out what my little idea might be. And that leads you to a career in corporate innovation, because that's where you go if you can't figure it out. But then in about 2005, in the wee hours of the morning, I started coding up Trend Hunter. And this was before Facebook, before YouTube. But I was trying to make a place where people from around the world could share ideas, because I thought maybe someone somewhere, some Trend Hunter in South America or a Trend Hunter in Europe, would submit a little business idea that would inspire me. And what I didn't expect is that the traffic would go from thousands to millions to billions. And at that point in time, it had more traffic than any newspaper in the world, except for 1 or 2. And yet that wasn't the purpose of it. So it's kind of accidental that it had taken off. But then on the back end, everything was about the research and studying what people were doing. And so now, 15 years later, it's evolved into a platform where we help entrepreneurs and people looking for their ideas on the front end of the website, but then on the back end, we work with several hundred brands to try and help them predict and create the future a bit faster.
Wow. So it started as an idea for you to grow your business, and yet it's exploded and grown for everybody. I gotta love how that works, huh?
That's how life goes.
Yeah, it totally is, man. It totally is. So, well, in the 40 of your book, Malcolm Gladwell says that you credit him with being the guy who helped do this. So talk to me about that, because that's really interesting, man. I read Malcolm's stuff, 20 years ago now with Tipping Point and stuff.
Sure.
So how did that happen?
Well, I'd made this website kind of like a giant focus group or place for me to study ideas. And I was just kind of motoring along and playing around with the idea. And then I was sitting in an MBA class, actually. And we were assigned to read his 1997 article called Cool Hunt, which talked about how studying the fringe of cool is how you actually start to identify trends that show overlooked opportunities and then effectively find your business idea. And when I heard that that was a profession, I was like, what? And so then I started changing my ideas for how Trend Hunter would work to actually be more of a platform for consumer research.
Wow, that's really cool. Really, really cool. So billions of hits. So I'm guessing you don't just have a $7.99 a month hosting plan. Talk to us about that. Right? As an entrepreneur, right? That's a problem that we'd all love to have. Too much traffic. So how does that actually work, Jeremy?
Yeah. So over time, we've had 170 million people come through the site, but we can't even host it like a normal site, to be honest, because we are trying to deeply study what a person chooses as they go through and interact with these ideas. And then we are trying to find clusters of opportunity with really advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, teams of researchers. So yeah, we have, I don't even know what it would look like. I should tour one day, but it would be some sort of enormous $250,000 or $500,000 computer system somewhere that's making this all happen.
Wow. Super cool, man. Super cool. Something to aspire to. One day my website will get more than 100 hits. That's my goal. So cool, man. So this book, Create the Future, we got to talk about this because that's the big thing that we're talking about today. And you've got 5 different kind of components there: the ability to change, culture of innovation, opportunity hunting, adaptive innovation, and then infectious messaging, which is super, super cool. And the book is super easy to read. I flipped through the PDF, which I love. My copy got lost in the mail, so I'm looking forward to getting that super soon. So tell me about the first part of that, the ability to change, because I think this is where a lot of organizations suffer. They don't really want to change. So talk about that, please.
So disruptive thinking and the ability to change is actually half of the book. And to explain the book, it's almost worth going back a little bit in time because it's a 2-sided book. And the one book is Create the Future, Tactics for Disruptive Thinking. But the other half is called the Innovation Handbook. And that is a total rewrite of a book I wrote a decade ago called Exploiting Chaos. And the reason I want to go back and start there is that in 2008, I'd written this book on how chaos creates opportunity. And then the world became really chaotic. And I was kind of the right place at the right time. And I became the chaos guy for a lot of CEOs. And you help one Fortune 500 CEO, you get recommended to another and another, and then it's 10, and then it's 50, and then it's 100, then it's 200. And I learned a lot from it. But in the process of that, and in the process of a decade of helping all sorts of different brands, we have learned as a team a lot of tactics that would make your life a lot easier when it comes to turning your idea into a reality. So I rewrote the book with that. But then the second thing is, if I looked at my framework of innovation, the part that I was really missing, the part that I would totally have wanted to do again, which I then made this whole second side for, Create the Future, was the fact that everyone wants innovation to happen. People want their idea. But what I've really started learning is the problem is there are so many things that cause you to just repeat your past decisions and go back to sticking to the path that you're already on. And so that's what I made this new half of the book, Create the Future, all about, which is to say you're capable of more than you think. We're experiencing history's highest rate of change. You have more opportunities around you than ever. And yet, each incremental layer of success makes it easier for you to just kick back and repeat what happened before. So how do you start thinking more disruptively so that you and your brain can see the potential of what you're actually capable of?
So this book isn't just for chief innovation officers or just for CEOs. Like a sales guy like me could actually learn something from this book and be better at sales by reading this and being more disruptive in my thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about disruptive thinking. And within sales, a lot of my work happens to be with sales teams, where what happens is that you can get caught in a groove of how you sell, how you approach a client, how you connect, the product that you're actually sort of pushing, or how you go about it. And success is actually one of the biggest traps. In fact, the way I like to put it is that 1,000,000 years ago, we were all hunters in an eat-or-be-eaten world, and we all have that ability to keep hunting. However, 10,000 years ago, people planted the first seeds and we became farmers. And when we did, we started becoming pre-wired to repeat and optimize whatever led to last year's harvest. And that comes with a series of farmer traps versus the original hunter instincts that impact all of us. And that actually impacts salespeople a lot, because ultimately sales is a role that is almost entirely about trying to hunt and find these new opportunities and constantly unearth what the capabilities are out there. And yet you can get caught in a groove of how you approach things, your method, your wording, and so the better you can understand that, the better you would be able to understand the potential of what you could actually sell.
Wow. That makes so much sense. As I train salespeople, that absolutely is the biggest trap. Is last year I was successful. So what happens is we kick butt until Q4, right? December. Then the clock resets in January, but yet we still think that last year is going to be predictive of this year. And we know it's not. I mean, the market changes, buyers change, the product change, the economy changes, everything changes. So how do we get started even, Jeremy, thinking about this disruptive way of thinking? What's like the first step?
Well, part of it is understanding how these traps on your brain actually work. So in the book, I walk through 7 traps of path dependency. And path dependency is actually a term from the 50s and social psychology and how we get trapped. But I walk through how you'd apply that to innovation and change. And you'll learn about things like the subtlety of your disruptive idea, which is that smart people consistently overlook ideas that were right within their grasp in all fields, because it's your own field of success where you start to exhibit the biggest traps. You learn how your neuropsychology starts trapping you in funny little ways. And the point would be that what you're trying to figure out first is what are the ways you're being unintentionally hindered, because you don't want that to happen. And then when you see how those traps impact you, then you can start layering on the different disruptive thinking techniques to actually break out of them.
Wow. That's awesome. So we have to know in order to break out. That makes sense, right? It starts with awareness. We have to be aware of that. So why, I'm curious though, Jeremy, why has this never been laid out before? I mean, this sounds pretty commonsensical as you lay it out, and maybe, I don't think I'm brilliant. So talk to me about that.
I mean, from our own experience now at Trend Hunter, we've done 10,000 projects, and it's Starbucks, Red Bull, Google, Disney, NASA. Like, we've done really cool projects. And what I've been amazed by along the way is that I think that the psychology of where people used to be like 10 years ago, or 5 even, was trying to convince everyone disruption's happening and we got to get into a world where we're willing to innovate. And now I think everybody gets that innovation is more important, but what's missing is a bit of a tactical handbook. You don't need to be convinced that now's the time to innovate yourself and whether it's sales techniques or whatever it is that you're trying to do. But I think what's missing is tactics. So I'll give you an example. People will say failure is an important part of innovation. Okay, cool, got it. So accept failure, but I don't actually want to do it. I want someone else on the team to fail. I don't want my project to fail. So how do you do that? And so we've been collecting tactics from all these clients. So for failure, as an example, at Adidas, they will host a project funeral to celebrate the project that didn't work out. At Staples, our client there will give you a written permission slip to fail, which means we know you're doing the higher risk project. You're allowed to do it. At the BBC, they have a gambling fund, and you might be told, yes, this project is actually part of the gambling fund, so it has a higher risk tolerance, and we get how it's going to turn out. But the point would be that whatever it is you're trying to do, I think what people are missing would be the tactics around innovation and change, because they don't really teach us that in school. We've got courses on marketing and courses on finance and accounting in our business schools, but there's not really the normal training or the profession on adapting to our wonderful world of chaos.
Wow. I would agree. I've read lots. I've studied lots. I don't have a master's, but I end up graduating with 187 credits. So I totally get that. And that's interesting, right? That tactical handbook. So I'm going to guess, right, if we think about that, that's going to be the flip side, right? That's going to be your innovation handbook. Sure. That's filled with those tactics, right?
Yeah. So you got the one side, create the future, and then the other side, but they're both, I have the tactics actually throughout. So the way I've laid it out is that each section, it's sort of a half visual book, and then each section ends with the tactics that you'd actually do to sort of break free from those traps and sort of make your idea happen.
Awesome. That's great. That's super, super helpful. So what infectious messaging being one of the last piece there of your create the future half, talk to us about that, because I think that's a lot of times where we miss, right? We have this great idea, but then how do we get it out there?
Yeah, so for your sales listeners in particular, infectious messaging is an interesting section of the book. It's about a fifth of the innovation handbook, and it stems from what we've learned at Trend Hunter in getting 3.5 billion views from 170 million people. And the takeaway that we've learned is that there's a very specific science to making your headlines take off. And often your headlines, which is no different than sales and word of mouth and how you connect to someone, we overlook and we just sort of describe what we're trying to do, and we think people will get it. But there's a certain madness to getting a message to really travel. And so we've very carefully been experimenting on this for 10 or 15 years to come up with a variety of frameworks. So I'll give you one. First of all, I should know how to choose you in 7 words or less. I should know what your product is in 7 words or less. You should be able to articulate that for me. But then within those 7 words, the framework that we would use would be simple, direct, and supercharged. And those 3 things are things we've studied and did a lot of analysis on, but also things that we studied it out on 400,000 articles, and we've compensated our editors based on it. But here's what it means. Simple would be that your 7 words or less should supercharge word of mouth. They should just be easy to understand. Got it. Direct, that's where people make a mistake because people get descriptive. Direct is very different. Direct means within your 7 words or less, I should know why I should choose you. And that's a bit different. And supercharged would mean you have the words that kind of flow and sound exciting. So to give you 2 examples of that, there's a burger, and it's called the Fleur Burger. And the Fleur Burger is at the Fleur de Lis restaurant in the Mandalay Bay Casino. And I could ask you, do you want it? The marketing team's probably happy. Fleur Burger, Fleur de Lis, it sounds French, it sounds luxurious. Cool, but you probably don't care. So then what if I said it's the world's most expensive hamburger? Well, now I was just simple and I was a little bit more direct. Now you're curious about it, but how much is it? Like, and now I'm interested. But if I call that the $5,000 hamburger, which it is, you'd be like, what? It's $5,000? It's a $5,000 hamburger? That message is now so direct that it just stuck. Now, that's easy to say when it's a $5,000 hamburger. Now, the next time someone asks you about an expensive burger, you'll remember, how much is it? $5,000. But if I put these into a different setting and trying to articulate your business, I'll use Trend Hunter as an example. For years, I had a struggle knowing that these wordings are important, but how do I describe this website is a trend website. Well, I don't know if you need a trend website. It's the world's biggest trend website. Well, that's a little bit more supercharged, but it's not direct. You don't get why you should be on there. So then eventually we changed to saying, oh, we find better ideas faster, better through science and faster through using crowdsourcing, etc. But if I say find better ideas faster, now that direct portion, you get a little bit more. So simple, direct, supercharged would be an example of one of the frameworks in infectious messaging. And in that section, we also get through a lot of the different tactics to break out of how you're currently describing your products and services.
Wow. That's so simple, so direct, and so supercharged that is possible. But why 7 words though? What is the science behind that, Jeremy?
So, well, there's 7 numbers in original phone number. You don't take away the error code, but the brain has it's been proven in different ways and disproven in others, but you have a short-term memory of what you can recall. And some say it's an amount of seconds is now the latest psychology, but it used to be that it's 7 words plus or minus 2 you can keep in your short-term mind. So if you can articulate what you're selling and repeat that in something that's very simple, then you're more likely to have that message stick with someone. And actually to get there, one of the tactics that we'll often do is introduce the frameworks, but then we have certain workshops in the book. Like a fun one would be take a couple minutes and with your fellow sales folks, write down all the words you use to articulate your product. Write them all down. Take 5 minutes, write down all the best ones, try saying it. Cool. Those words are now 100% banned. Do that same thing again, but you can't use any of the same words. And then you'll start, and if I use my example, you'd be like, oh, maybe we're the Netflix for ideation or the Netflix for creative thinking, but you start having to go around it. And the main thing you're trying to do is recognize, as sort of the premise of the whole book, that we get caught in a path of repeating the past decisions. And in order to break out of the path, even if you don't ban those words for life, you need to go through the exercises of looking at your problems from different perspectives, and then you'll be more likely to see what you're actually overlooking.
Wow. I think that would break some people's hearts, man. If they had to do that, right?
Words, absolutely, it does.
That's fun. That's really fun. So awesome. So all these frameworks, all these different things. So what's the one thing that surprised you about writing this book? I mean, you've written other books, other bestsellers. I'm sure this one is set to break out as well. So what surprised you about putting this book together, Jeremy?
Well, I had the most fun on Create the Future on what is the second section, and it's all about your neuropsychological traps. And I've always been curious about this, but I went down this route a lot faster. And I think people don't grasp how your neuropsychology causes you to stick to a path in a way that's really interesting, because you can break it with some tactics very quickly. So I'll give you a couple examples. But when you practice something, whatever you practice, your brain creates myelin, which is a little highway that paves that neural connection of what you just did. So you try something for the first time, whether it's picking up a tennis racket or a microphone or whatever it is, and you fumble around a little bit. But then once you've done that a lot, you know how to do it. You practiced it. Got it. But what happens in your brain is that your brain paves a little pathway of myelin, which is like a little highway, and then you can basically repeat the same task better and faster. And whatever you're the best at, if you're the best salesperson in the world or whatever it is, your top pathway becomes 100 times faster. And this myelin makes up 40% of your brain. So it's a very important fact. But what it starts to do is kind of wild. So I'll show you 2 little examples that are fun. And the one would be as fast as you can, competitively, cross your arms. I know it sounds weird to do, but just cross your arms for a second. Now uncross them. And now as fast as you can competitively, cross your arms, but the other way. And it's like you kind of fumble around and you figure it out. Now that's not the most mind-blowing thing, but what happens is that your brain has a myelin pathway to cross your arms the one way. And when you try the other way, you just have to technically think about it. And it's not much, but that's one level. Now I'll go one level higher. I do this audience exercise. I've done it more than 100 times, and it's actually from the 60s. It's called alternative uses test. But I say, okay, what can you do with a paperclip? Just tell me, let's do it live. What can you do? And people will come up, and I've done this more than 100 times. You can do this with your colleagues, and they will say, in order, I can guess 90% of what every group will say. They will say almost in order, you can pick a lock, you can make it a weapon, you can fold paper, you can make a necklace, an earring, a chain, you can trade it, you can make art, You could short circuit something. You can use it as a toothpick, or you can hang a Christmas ornament. I'm not lying to you. In 40% of groups, Christmas ornament and toothpick will come up. But here's the thing. Almost nothing else comes up. That's it. Now, the weird part is twofold. One, I can predict the ideas. But two, the average kindergarten kids can get to 200 ideas. So then after the group gets to 10, I go, oh, that's good. And then I play a video fast forwarding my little niece who rocks out, 100 ideas like that. And why that's so interesting is that that's your myelin. And it's the one step up from crossing your arms. It's that your brain operates fast by only showing you the things you've seen or done before. It's only showing you. Now, if I did a workshop and I said, okay, give me 10 more ideas with a paper clip that are functional. What about 10 in medicine? What about, you could get some of the more ideas, but you have to do an exercise to break out. And so what's wild about that is you start, when you try that little exercise on yourself, you see how your brain is limited. You feel kind of shocked to realize someone else can guess it. And it means that you do have other great ideas within your grasp, but they're not the things you've kind of thought of that someone else has crushed. It's the fact that your brain funnels you into a pathway to help you be fast in life. And so if you have little techniques around that when you need to be creative, then you'll actually immediately notice a difference.
Wow. Exercises to break our myelin. How do you spell myelin for those that are curious, Jeremy? I've never heard that word.
Myeline. But I've never been asked how to spell on the show, so that's probably where I'm going to break apart. But
all right,
myelin, so it's your myelin pathways.
Good. Yeah, no math problems, but spelling. I did win the 8th grade spelling bee. I beat my cousin Heather. So that's on all my shows, right? Try to do a little spelling there. No, that's
even that. I know I'm terrible at spelling. There's no E at the end. If I put an E at the end, Myelin. But they say the greatest minds can't spell, so that's fine.
Oh, that means I'm a simpleton. So thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate that proof there, buddy. So talk to me. So the book is Create the Future. You can get it at createthefuturebook.com. It's 2-sided. So do we have anything cool for folks if they want to get 100 copies or 1,000 copies or even 5 copies of this book?
Sure. Well, the book is in any bookstore, but on that createthefuturebook.com, there's all sorts of extra bundles. There's digital goodies. If you get a bigger amount, you get a free ticket to one of our 20 future festivals. There's all sorts of extras on that createthefuturebook.com site, as well as our assessment and some of our free trend research for anyone that wants to take part in this journey to be more disruptive and find their true potential.
Awesome. So I know you do a ton of speaking. So where are you headed in the future? If people, maybe they're going to be lucky enough to go out and see you speak, Jeremy, is there anywhere coming up that you're excited about or like, holy crap, it's going to be really cold?
Well, we have, so I do 70 cities a year, but 20 of them are our own Trend Hunter events called Future Festival. And this year is actually the book launch tour, which is pretty fun. So you hear me talking about Create the Future, but then you hear my team go through the overlooked opportunities that we're seeing in retail, lifestyle, marketing, consumer behavior, and super future of technology. So it's kind of a neat little one-day immersion, and it's in 20 cities, probably one near you.
Awesome. So folks, go check out the createthefuturebook.com. Get a copy of Jeremy's book. Jeremy, it is a delight to chat with you, buddy. Thank you for sharing all the insight you did and helping us break out of our neural pathways and innovate more.
Well, thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks. You too, man. You too. So folks, check this out, right? Go to createthefuturebook.com. Check out Jeremy Gutsche, all this good stuff. Find him, check out Trend Hunter, and get a copy of Create the Future book. It's going to be fantastic for you because it's a flip book. Create the Future Innovation Handbook. Really good stuff. Check it out, folks. Have a great day.